Hi, Dave.
Hey, Adriana, how's it going?
All good, and you?
I'm doing great.
Nice. How was Australia?
Oh man, it was a trip out there. It was fucking
I saw
crazy.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, we did it was getting out there was uh, 2 full days of travel on either side, missed flights and crazy layovers and all that shit, but getting out there and playing in the outback and getting to have that experience was truly one of a kind.
Okay, yeah, that's nice. I watch all your stories. I mean, the good part is that you had a lot of drinks and yummy food at the airport.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt a little bit jelly because of that. I need a vacation.
Yeah, well, just fly to Australia. You'll get to see like 10 cities and have layovers in them as you're trying to get out there. So
Yeah, cool. So it's really nice to meet you. The last time I saw you playing with Whitechapel and Cannibal Corpse in March.
oh, cool,
Yeah,
awesome.
I
What
flew
show
to
were you
Dallas. I'm
at?
from Guadalajara, but I
Uh-huh.
went to that tour.
Oh,
You were
cool.
amazing.
Thank you so much. Thank you. What show did you see?
In Dallas, I
Oh,
saw
cool.
you with Shallow Vincent, Whitechapel, and Cannibal Corpse.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That Dallas show was great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it was great. I really enjoyed it so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
So this is a new album and a new Revocation stage. Tell me, how do you feel about releasing another album just with you as a guitarist? And how do you think your sound has evolved since how you did with Existence is Futile?
Yeah. Well, I'm very excited about the new record for sure. Um, Going back to a three-piece,
Yeah,
it was a pretty smooth transition. Um, Basically, I just I had to write a couple more songs for the record, which uh, wasn't an issue since we were had so much downtime from the pandemic anyway, so there wasn't like a
yeah,
dearth of material at all. It was, if anything, I had kind of like an abundance of stuff. Um, and I've definitely, I think I've really evolved as a songwriter over the years. I mean, I think any good musician, any good artist, strives to evolve over time, right? You don't want to just kind of stay stagnant.
yeah,
So I mean, I can say, certainly, I think I've evolved on every single front. I've evolved as a guitar player, as a technician. I've evolved as a um, composer. I've
yeah.
evolved as a singer slash lyricist. And on this record, I've evolved as a producer because it was the first time I've ever actually tracked the majority of the record myself. So Ash recorded his drum parts with Shane at the Brick Hit House, we've done that on our last record. But for the
Yeah.
guitars and vocals, I tracked and recorded that all myself, and I also engineered Brett's bass playing on the record too. So it was quite an undertaking, but I definitely learned a lot.
Yeah, that's amazing. You're a wise man and you're an amazing musician, and the lyrics of this album are amazing. I already listened to it, and I think you knocked it out of the park. I think it's perfect, just these nice songs of infernal death metal. But one thing that I love so much of it is that I noticed some black metal riffs and some proggy ones, but it's the same bass sound of the Revocation we adore. So how do you achieve the balance between a sound identity and evolving yourselves in this sound?
Yeah, I guess it comes sort of naturally to me. I don't know. I think
Okay.
over the years we've definitely experimented with different sounds and
Mhm.
styles um and that might have maybe even made some of our earlier records almost feel a little bit like erratic at times.
Mhm.
But I think going through that process, writing a bunch of different songs, it's just like practicing. If you practice your scales every day or your arpeggios, you're going to get more technically proficient. I think if you
Yeah.
practice writing songs, you're going to get better as a songwriter. I mean, at this point we have, I don't know, it's probably close to 100 songs in the Revocation catalog. So
Yeah.
I've put my time in there for sure. Yeah, I think it's just a process of you know writing. I mean, this is our eighth record, full length, right? And then not even counting the EP. So
Yeah.
just the more you do it, the more I think you refine that sound, and I feel very confident and comfortable with the Revocation sound now. I feel like we've kind of we still push our boundaries, and we still push the metal genre in different directions, I like to think. But we've also kind of distilled our sound down more, and I think it's maybe a little bit more crystallized, a little bit more hardened, and a little bit more focused. So yeah, I think the honing in over the years on that sort of sound has definitely paid off on the new record.
Yeah, I think your identity right now, it's like very clear and technical, and all the fans around the world love it. And you're an amazing guitar player. I play guitar as a hobby, and I have you as a reference to get inspired, and so that's really cool because everything you do out there.
Oh, thank you so much. That's great. I love to hear that I can inspire people. I mean,
Yeah,
I've had so
thank
many
you.
great, and I'm continued to be inspired by, other guitar players, other musicians. So that's the beautiful thing about music is,
Yeah.
I can put some ideas out into the world, and then, someone like yourself might get inspiration, and now you're creative because of that. Now you put your ideas out, and it just kind of keeps, it's like it's just this kind of eternal loop that just kind of keeps happening, and you just put creative energy out there, and then that just makes more creativity, which is something I strive for.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. And you did a lot of things in this album, so I want to know this special part with lyrics. How do you match your songs with the riffs? I'd like to know how was David's formula recording this album.
Sure. So for me, it all starts with the riff.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I just kind of collect my ideas. I put them together. I've certainly gotten better over time at cataloging my ideas. I mean, I used to, when I was a kid, 15, 16, like I discovered my mom had this like just dusty tape player in the basement, and it had like an input jack on it. And I'm like, oh, I wonder if I can plug my guitar into this. And it had like a little record function. So that was my first time recording, was just like recording on blank tapes, just in my mom's basement, just
Ooh.
guitar into a Metal Zone pedal, just directly into the tape recorder. And then I moved on to GarageBand, and then later I got into Logic. So like I've gotten better at cataloging my ideas. I've gotten better at interfacing with technology. But at the end of the day, I'm still that 16-year-old kid in my mom's basement, just writing riffs. That's where it comes from for me, is just me with an amp and my guitar, and just kind of messing around, almost meditating, and then like just kind of seeing what comes out. I think I write my best shit sometimes when I'm not trying to write anything.
Yeah, exactly. It's like very natural, like naturally composing.
Yep.
So not talking about Netherheaven, I think this is a duality between heaven and hell. And I like the way you talk about stuff like summoning demons, like also the struggles about religion and politics nowadays and more. And for you, which is the most powerful and meaningful message you are sharing in this album?
For me, what's the most powerful?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I mean, where the inspiration from? I guess how I'd answer that is to say that the message can be different, I guess, depending on the listener, right? So
Yeah.
And I think I try to be symbolic with my lyrics as well, so that maybe people can take different things from them. I mean, me personally, when I was feeling inspired to write about this record, it was kind of twofold. I wanted to kind of pay homage to some of my favorite kind of infernal death metal bands of the past, like shit that really got me into metal, and even, things that kind of helped push me over the finish line in terms of moving into more of like an atheistic, agnostic way of thinking. Because, I went to Catholic school as a kid, and, and was raised, I wasn't like, my parents weren't like super religious, but like, obviously being a kid going to Catholic school, you're going to sort of believe, in what your teachers are telling you. So I was kind of pretty much deprogrammed from that as soon as I left elementary school. Like as soon as I hit middle school, I was like listening to death metal, and like just was like, all right, this is probably all bullshit. So it's kind of my ode to that, like the death metal just vibe in general, and black metal too. Obviously, you can't leave out black metal, and even some types of thrash too. I mean, I think of Slayer as kind of the original, or one of the original kind of satanic bands. I mean, even Black Sabbath, right? I mean, they weren't overtly, but certainly in the imagery and all that. So anyway, it was kind of my ode to diabolical death metal, and then at the same time, I was looking at sort of what sort of the macro environment of what's happening in the U.S. and also kind of around the world. I see extremist religious groups kind of partnering with politics more and more. I see a trend of in general, I think the global population, or at least the U.S. population, is trending more more atheist or more agnostic, but power is being consolidated more and more with these sort of religious right-wing political groups. So it really deeply concerned me, and I felt compelled to write about it. So I wasn't just trying to use Christianity as sort of like an easy punching bag. I did kind of see it as a sort of an existential threat to the way of life of just people in general, at least when it comes to how it's being used as a political tool, to in legislation, and to hold power over people's lives that don't hold those values at all. So I did feel like a sense of concern, and I felt that it was sort of very relevant to the times that we're living in today.
Super. I think for me, one of the most powerful lyrics is Nihilistic Violence, because of the reality we're living. And I'm also personally against the mix of politics and religion because of all the mess we're living around the world, So I think maybe this is the perfect song for the album to explain what is happening for us, like non-believers at all, but also the reality that we have with politics, because I think all the wars are because of that, politics and religion. And I don't know, I think this is one of the most powerful songs of the album. What do you think about it?
Thank you. Yeah, that's a special one. That was inspired sort of, by the events of January 6th in the U.S., the insurrection at the Capitol. And it was also inspired by just sort of the general movement of the political discourse sort of that led to those events, the sort of, crumbling of democracy in America, and the kind of palpable seething sort of hatred that was fomenting kind of beneath the surface, that was bubbling up. That the title of that song was a direct quote taken from a book I read by Chris Hedges, who's a really fantastic author. The book's entitled America: The Farewell Tour, and he talks about institutions being sort of hollowed out from the inside, economic opportunity leaving many places in America, and leaving people behind. And when people feel hopeless, and they see things being taken away, whether it's healthcare or their job or any kind of stability, oftentimes they turn to violence. And that violence can be inflicted upon others, or it could be self-inflicted, whether it's horrible drug addiction or just other types of self-harm. So he described that as a nihilistic violence. Was very that I read that and I was like, oh my God, that's so deep. So I kind of filed that one away, and then when it came time to write the lyrics, they just kind of flowed out of me.
Yeah, now that you mentioned that book, I'd like to know about more documentaries or even more books that have inspired you to create and talk about this topic in the album.
Sure. Chris Hedges, I definitely was inspired by that book, America: The Farewell Tour. There was, it's a brutal book, but it's really so well written. Other books that inspired me, I reread Dante's Inferno, which is a classic book. So Re-Crucified is sort of inspired by that. I've read some of the works of Robert Chambers. He wrote a book called The King in Yellow. I don't know if you've ever seen the True Detective
Yeah.
season 1, but the Yellow King is directly inspired by Robert Chambers' works.
Okay.
So that was where that King in Yellow came from, was from Robert Chambers, who was an old author. And I kind of drew a distinction there. Basically, if you're not familiar with the original works, the King in Yellow is a collection of short stories, but there's a thread that is carried through the short stories, which is the King in Yellow, which is a made-up play. The whole idea of the play is it's in 2 parts. The first part is pretty just kind of normal, but it kind of draws you in. And the second act of the play, if you finish it, you actually go insane.
I'm gonna read them.
Yeah, so there's something, it's a mix, like a mystical text or whatever.
Okay.
But the distinction I drew with that is almost like, religious text, right? I mean, you can, be an otherwise totally normal person, but if you get, too indoctrinated and believe, religious texts, take them, as literal, I think obviously, at the very least, it can lead you kind of to some, immoral thinking, and, at the worst, I mean, wars, all sorts of justifications, right, that we can use, and we can use religious texts for those. So I sort of drew some distinctions there. Then, I mean, for the first track, first single, Diabolical Majesty, I was inspired by a documentary that I saw called Hail Satan, but with a question mark. And, that was about the Satanic Temple's clash with the religious right for their... it was basically a freedom of speech issue. There was different governments in the U.S., different local politicians that were putting up statues of, 10 Commandments or Jesus, and we're supposed to have separation of church and state. So the Satanic Temple said, okay, well, if you're going to put up, one religious monument on government property, you have to be open to putting up any type of religious monument. Otherwise, you're giving preference, and you're essentially removing the separation of church and state. So they were fighting to actually put up a giant statue of the Baphomet next to 10 Commandments or or other religious sort of monuments on government property. And there was a huge pushback, and local governments and all these things, and it was the legal teams had to get involved. So on one element, it was sort of just a trolling of the religious right, and on the other hand, it really was, I think, a very critical statement about freedom of speech and the separation of church and state in the country. So anyway, there's a whole bunch of things that were kind of inspiring me to write about topics on this new record.
Cool. Where do you watch that documentary? It is on Prime?
I forget where I saw it. It was either Netflix or Prime. I'm sure it's easy to find.
Okay, I'll take a look on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, not talking about something that amazed me and I love. It's about Strange and Eternal. It has a different element, and it's melody vocals, something that we're not that used to on Revocation songs, but it came really well because it gave me like spookish vibes when I hear them. And that's good news because I was really into the song's concept. So I want to know how you came up with the idea of adding them to the song, the clean vocals.
Sure. So that song was inspired by the King in Yellow. So that was the Robert Chambers, which again, maybe sort of slightly breaks from the hellish theme of the record, but again, I was able to kind of connect it in my own mind, with different themes. That song, I think, really it has a narrative quality to it. I wanted to take people on this journey, and with the melodic vocals there, I pulled actually sort of directly from the poem from the King in Yellow play. So I wanted to have, because one of the short stories, the character is the final scene is the character's in a church, and everything kind of just he finally confronts the Yellow King, and everything just kind of like melts away, and it's this like sort of cosmic reckoning, and the character is being sort of confronted with this like malignant like deity, and is just kind of like just sort of in a horrified awe of its presence. So I wanted to, almost make it sound like a haunting kind of ghastly choir. So, I did multiple vocal harmonies. I even sang the lyrics, you know, the same melody but with different voices. So, you know, some I was kind of more sort of bellowing, some I was kind of singing, you know, a little bit more like not nasally necessarily, but like just kind of different tones of my voice. So not necessarily different pitches, but different tones of voice. Because I really wanted it to sound like a choir, and like, you know, something that was kind of like overpowering you, like almost, you know, angelic and demonic at the same time. Because the Yellow King, there's very little sort of known about the Yellow King other than it's just sort of like this like maleficent sort of entity, but there's not like a whole lot of description of it. So I wanted it to have almost like that ineffable feel to it. So I'm glad that came across.
Yeah, you got it. It was amazing because I really felt like that spookish vibe, and I was like really into the song. I was feeling like I was like trapped in the space or something, like wondering about me, or I don't know. That was my feeling when I heard that song, and it was a really detail to have that kind of vocals.
Great. I'm glad that it had that effect on you.
Yeah, thanks. So I also think that this album invite you like to investigation, retrospection, and even visiting historical places like the Sedlec Ossuary in the Czech Republic, which inspired you to the sound galleries of morbid artistry. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to know, what are your expectations of the fans regarding the theme and sound of this album?
Yeah, it's I don't know. I think they're definitely going to be in for a ride. You know, there's a lot of different elements to it, even though it has that kind of infernal death metal sound. I think every single song has its own personality, has its own sound. I think each one can kind of stand alone, but also feels very cohesive to me at the same time. So yeah, in an age where, you know, everyone kind of makes playlists or just sort of listens to one song from one artist and kind of bounces around, I hope this feels like a cohesive artistic statement, and that people will want to, you know, whether they're listening to it on Spotify or on Apple Music, or, you know, or have the record or the CD. I'm hoping that people, you know, throw it on and can listen to the whole record all the way through, and just, you know, be inspired to continue to crank it, and, you know, hopefully tell their friends, and, you know, spread the gospel of Revocation. Yeah, I
think it has really different shades each song, but it is a really good mix with all the track list. I think the track list is really, really well made, because you really feel that stories, and I don't know, I think it's gonna work pretty well, such a whole album and also each single.
Thank you.
So also, now Netherheaven is my top 1 favorite album of Revocation, and for me, surpassing the other ones. And I'm super into aliens and space theme stuff, space theme stuff. And I have to ask something a little bit personal. Mm-hmm. If you have had any extranormal experience, or if you are willing to have one in your life, because I love to see an UFO or something experience like that.
Yeah, I did see a UFO one time. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I was with my friends. We were like on a golf course. I was like, you know, like a teenager, like, I don't know, probably like 17 or something like that. And we were just kind of like hanging out, and we were smoking weed, but we all saw it. We all saw the same thing. So
okay.
There was like a really bright star. It was like orange, and I'm like, what kind of star is that? You know, it looked so kind of bright in the sky. It was super far away, super distant. And I literally just sort of saw the star. So, you know, it's here in the sky, and it just shoots over across the sky and just kind of stops on a dime, and then shoots off a totally different way. So it was like this diagonal, like all the way across, like stopped on a dime and then shot off in a different direction. It was like, we were all like, did you just see that? Like, it was crazy. And then that was it. That was the only thing I saw, but it was definitely one of those things where you're like, I'm glad other people were around to see it. But yeah, I mean, the only way I could describe that was a UFO. Because sometimes you see things, you know, falling really quickly through the sky. You're like, oh, it's a shooting star or whatever. But the fact that this kind of shot across, stopped, you know, dead stopped after I mean, picture cutting across the sky. I mean, that had to move so incredibly fast. I mean, it looks like, just a foot when you're looking at it like this, but obviously that far away, I don't even know how many miles it was, instantaneously, and then just shooting off in a totally other direction. I don't know anything that, that military or otherwise that, could do that. So,
yeah, we don't know. I think they are hidden a lot of things of us, like the government, because I really believe that there's more things out there,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's maybe a little bit egotistical to think that humans are the only
Exactly.
species that was able to survive, and especially when you think of the vastness of the
universe.
cosmos. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Trillions of stars, and it's just crazy to think about.
Yeah, just crazy, but it's amazing to have like the opportunity to see things like that in the sky. It's amazing.
Yeah.
How we can do it one day. I just had like one kind of experience. One of my friends discovered some stuff in the beach, like totems and weird things like figures. But after that, there's nothing more I can tell about the topic. Like I've seen with my eyes is the only thing. Yeah, that's really weird, but fascinating. It's a fascinating topic for me.
Yes.
So besides all the books you read, I think you're a man of knowledge and also a great metal supporter because you're always wearing a lot of underground bands merch. And thanks to you, I'm always Googling all the logos you wear.
Cool.
So what do you think about the increase of bands in the metal scene?
Yeah, I think it's great. There's just so many creative bands out there doing different things. There's a resurgence of an old school death metal aesthetic right now, which is cool. I mean, you can see it in the, in the artwork, you can hear it in the music. I'm just a fan of bands that push the envelope and push things into different directions. So I love that I can be, 36-year-old dude and like still find new bands that inspire me. And that there's, that next generation of kids, just riffing around, and, someone's going to come out with a record and it's going to totally blow me away of some band I've never even heard of. So I think that that's pretty cool. It's like, it feels very kind of anti-pop in that way. It's not about like, a polished sound necessarily, or having like this, super sort of polished and sanitized look. It's like there's just gonna be new bands coming out. Some random kid with a cheap guitar, on like some shitty amp somewhere is just writing some like mind blowing riffs, and who knows? Maybe in a year or two we'll all discover that band and be like, wow, that's super cool, and then that's going to inspire another generation of people. So I think it's great.
So do you have any bands to recommend?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the Cosmic Putrefaction are doing some really cool stuff. That band Warp Chamber are doing some sick riffage. I'm trying to think of Fan of Faxath is like really mind-blowing shit. I mean, even like like the OG like death metal band, like I mean, the Cannibal Corpse record that came out during the pandemic was fucking incredible. So, I'm getting inspiration from bands, young and old. I mean, there's just so much great shit out there.
Yeah, and also I think you're actually one of the most important exponents in death metal, and also bands like I don't know, like Blood Incantation and Gate Creeper are bringing like some different shades in death metal, and I think is something that has maintained this subgenre fresh and alive. And I don't know, what do you think will be death metal's evolution in 10 years?
I don't know. Maybe man will merge with machine by that point, and it'll be a whole new level of extremity. It's so hard to predict trends, but it seems like there's sometimes like a pendulum that kind of swings, right, in terms of just the popularity of different genres. So, old school death metal is kind of making a comeback right now. Who knows, maybe in 5 years time, like thrash will be, like kind of more like that kind of more punk driven kind of thrash will be back in vogue, or maybe, maybe black metal might, really come back in full force. I'd love to see like a crazy grind resurgence. I think that would be cool. So I don't know. It's hard to predict, but yeah, who knows? Maybe we'll be all cyborgs in 10 years, and it'll be everyone will be playing at the fastest possible tempos ever.
I know, that will be mind blowing.
Yeah.
And to end up with this interview, how eager are you to bring these new Netherheaven songs to Latin America? Because you have a lot of fans here around the world, but really in the Mexican fan base, you're really important, and also in Colombia.
Yeah. I can't wait to play some of the new Netherheaven material live. The Latin American crowds are always great. You said you were from Guadalajara, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a great show in Guadalajara. It's just a beautiful city in general. I love exploring and seeing the sights and all that. Really cool art. So yeah, I can't wait to get down there and give these songs a proper debut down there.
Okay, well, can't wait to see you here. And thank you so much for your time. This is a really honest album with all the topics that all of us have wondered at least once in our life. And I think you're sounding better than ever. So thank you for listening, and I hope to see you soon here in Mexico.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I hope to see you soon as well.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I'm gonna stop.